Good afternoon, almost afternoon, everyone. This is Evelyn Ray with the ISSA North Carolina chapter of the Triad. Welcome to our 2020 Security Summit. We have had a great day so far with our sessions. Yesterday we had our workshop, so we thank you for continuing to log into the sessions and watch our presentations. I wanted to take a minute to thank our gold sponsors, DNS, that's Data Network Solutions, and Palo Alto. They have done a great job in the workshops and today with being a keynote presenter. We have Bruce, he's going to be talking about automation and how you should use it. But Brian Pierce is actually going to do an introduction of him. I just want to thank you guys so much for being a gold sponsor. We really honestly couldn't do this without you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Yeah, we're happy to participate and thankful for the opportunity to do so. So thank you very much for having us and welcome everyone. My name is Brian Pierce. I'm with Data Network Solutions, as Evelyn mentioned. We are proud to sponsor the Triad ISSA Summit again this year with Palo Alto. And we are fortunate to have with us Mr. Bruce Hembree, who's the Field Chief Technology Officer for Cortex XDR at Palo Alto Networks. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bruce.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me and see my screen. Is that correct? Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think everyone's muted, Bruce, but we can hear you and we can see your slides.
Outstanding. So good morning. I am the field CTO for Cortex. Here at Palo Alto Networks, we have three divisions. We have our firewalls, we have our cloud, and then we have our endpoint and machine learning. In Cortex, we make the machine learning, we make the endpoint, we make the automation components that are behind all the Palo Alto networks that you may know and love. The goal of what I'm going to share with you today is to give you an opportunity to look inside of offensive threat actions that I have seen, how threat actors use the tools that are available to them, and how those tools impact what they do and how their malware campaigns can be more successful about what they're doing. So my background is in information systems warfare, the United States military. But most relevant to what we'll talk about today, I was a security operations manager for the digital crimes unit at Microsoft. And what we did there was we worked with law enforcement and government agencies. We would identify an existential threat to the internet, such as an organized crime group. We would look at the way that their networks were architected, and then we would exploit the vulnerabilities in the way that those networks were architected to seize and render inert those networks. So we were doing takedowns of organized crime networks like Citadel, Rustock, Damatol, Nitol, Configure. The goal was to make the internet a better place for everyone. On the offensive side, the thing that we disliked the most was automation. The greater degree of automation that a threat actor was using meant that it was more difficult to shut them down. I'll give you a good example, Zbot. We were only able to seize the click fraud component of Zbot because of the degree of automation that their network had. So automation is the key to your defense. I would argue that the smaller you are, the more you need automation. You may say, we're too small for that, we don't have the people for that. I'm here to tell you, the smaller you are, the more you need it. And the reason is because on the offensive side, threat actors are trying to drown you in data. They want to drown you in alerts that make it where you can't do your job. On the offensive side, we know where you live, we know what religion you are, we know what time of day it is, we know local political or religious events that means that you won't be in the office. All those things become part of an effective threat campaign. Making sure that the human that is in the loop is exploited is the goal, either through overwhelming them with alerts or making sure that they aren't there to stop it. One way or the other, the human is always the weak spot. The automation that you have and the automation that you use well and effectively is your only true defense. A human will eventually turn down or turn off or ignore alerts. That is the nature of the animal. Automation never gets sick, it doesn't go on vacation, and it never turns down alerts. The more automation you're using, the more effective you're going to be in your network defense. I'm going to give you examples of automation on the offensive side, and then I'm going to give you examples of how we at Palo Alto Networks, as the largest security company in the world, we become a very large target. Palo Alto Networks as a trophy would be a significant value to any threat actor group. If they could put us on the wall and say, we took down Palo Alto. Therefore, we are using internally our tools to the best we can. We want to make sure that we are using everything to build the most effective defense possible. This, unfortunately, is what most organizations look like. This degree of complexity. This complexity is what makes things challenging to defend. On the offensive side, the more fragmented, the more tools you have, the more likely you are to experience a breach, because each tool produces a gap between itself and the next tool in terms of efficacy and learning for the individuals that are using it. So you have to know all of your tools, and you have to know all of them well. That's the hard part. Doing that gracefully, doing that elegantly is not easy. So we want to take this and we want to help you automate this as much as possible. That should be your goal. The more you automate these components, the better off you will be. Because the simple truth is, at the end of the day, in terms of endpoint security, in terms of firewalls, in terms of general defense, a lot of security companies are all within 5 or 10% of each other. But that 5 or 10% is the critical difference. That one tiny little sliver at the right side of this page, that is where the most damaging attacks happen. The most nuanced threat actors understand the value of living off the land, going low and slow, being effective at what they do without too much complexity. They do this by using automation. The reason why we need to automate these things is because we are experiencing a critical shortage in the people that know how to do this defense well. We're looking at 500,000 people that are not in the security realm that need to be. We don't have them. They're just not there. This means that the engineers that are currently defending the networks, they are in a position where they are overworked, and frequently they have threat actors building solutions to increase the severity of that overwork. The average salary for a CISSP in the United States is roughly $120,000. This is only one of multiple security certifications that I'll pick on. These people that hold these certifications, they are heavily marketed to. They are intensely recruited. And the likelihood of them staying in a position where they feel overwhelmed is not good, because they don't want to come to work. They are behind the 8 ball from the time that they come in the morning to the time they get to leave in the evening. Most people stay in their jobs roughly 3.8 years. For people with those certifications, it is substantially less because of the pressure of the work that they're performing, and because of the frantic searching for answers to the problems that they have. So the tenure for these positions drops because of the stress associated with doing the work. And for the threat actors on the offensive side, they understand that. They understand that these personnel are overworked and that they don't have a chance to look at everything. That's where automation comes back in. They are creating this volume of data, this volume of alerts to make sure that you don't know where to look first. This is a real statistic. 17 months is the average lifespan of a CISO. It all comes down to the quantity of stress that they have. Their incidence of drug and alcohol abuse is substantially higher than the mean. Automation is the only real way to give back the quality of life to the people that you have in your organization because of things like this. This is real data from inside of Palo Alto Networks from our wildfire system. Our wildfire system is where we sandbox threat. And what I'm trying to call your attention to is the difference between May of this year and May and June of last year. You're looking at a 30 to 40% growth in the types of malware just in a year. Does this mean that the number of threat actors has grown by 30 or 40%? Absolutely not. It means that they are employing automation to become better at what they do. So is this a recent trend? Absolutely not. They are becoming more effective at what they do. They are doing more with less. The more they automate, the better they are at what they do. So this is the actual file types and the volume of the file types that we are seeing inside of Palo Alto Networks. It is an extraordinary map of the efficacy of the automation that threat actors are using today. This 4 years of data is a clear indicator of the use of automation on the threat actor side. Why are they doing this? Because for certain nations, it is their economy. They are under economic sanctions from other nations around them, so they can't trade as they would normally. It's easy to make money on the internet, and I'm talking billions. I'll give you an example. One of the botnets that we took down at the Digital Crimes Unit was called Citadel. In the 18 months prior to us seizing Citadel, it had stolen $500 million. That is a botnet that's large enough to be listed on the NASDAQ. You're looking at an asset, a botnet, that can make you $500 million in 18 months. They will go to whatever links are necessary to ensure the propagation and the retention of that asset. That includes using encryption for the initial infection vector, for exfiltration of data, for command and control. They will take the time to set up bogus phishing pages that they look 100% authentic. They will take the time to encrypt those phishing pages. So you're looking at over 75% of phishing pages right now are encrypted. And most users have been educated to believe that if they see that lock in the browser, it's legit. That's what you're up against. Someone that can make $500 million in 18 months, and you have to automate against it because they are automating against you. This is from inside of Wildfire as well. You're looking at the incidence of brand new malware that had never been seen before into our customers' networks over the course of the last year. This is malware that is unique. It is either a new hash or an entirely new strain. The level of innovation that they have in terms of brand new malware is frankly kind of steady, but the volume that they're putting it out, that's where it shows the automation. That's where I'm trying to get the point to you that this level of automation is what's producing the money that they're making out of these networks. And just since COVID, we've had some very interesting changes. Phishing, especially related to COVID, 393%, command and control 161. They are all working from home and have been for years, but now they know you are too. Users that are in a home environment are more likely to have or to exhibit behaviors associated with a more lax security practice if you let them. If you give them the opportunity, the users that are in their homes are more likely to click on a link. They're more likely to go to a website. They're more likely to be less vigilant in their homes than they would be at work. Why? Because they're going across the internet connection that they paid for. They're in the comfort of their home office. They're in the comfort of their home bedroom. Wherever they're at, they are at home. This is where you start using things like zero trust. Start using VPN all the time. Why do you do that? Because when you're using VPN and zero trust, you are enforcing a security boundary that they have to traverse before they can get out to the internet. Split tunneling allows them to get around that mechanism. I encourage you to use zero trust. Make sure that you put people in a position where they do have to transit a security boundary. Once they do that, then they get a chance to see that the threat actors are truly building tools and technologies that are designed to compromise them in innovative ways. So now I'm going to give you an example of one hash. This is one hash of Emotet. This happened in about 9 minutes. It created 5,000 sessions in 9 minutes. Was there an individual running this? Absolutely not. This was automation. 9 minutes, over 5,000 sessions for one hash of Emotet. The only way to effectively do this is with automation. They're leveraging the power of the compute they have at their hands, whether it's your workstation or your server that they have compromised, or their own that they have in, say, a safe harbor nation or with a bulletproof hosting provider. They're leveraging those tools to use the power of the digital age and the internet to excel at what they do. This is automation in action. And here's what happens when threat actors go on vacation. Emotet kind of dropped off the map there around the 5th of June 2019. And we were wondering what exactly is going on. What was going on was that they were taking an opportunity to go on vacation and spend all the money that they had stolen from around the world. How do we know this? Because it came back. And it came back better than ever. They wanted to start off fresh out of the gate and become good at what they did, what they're trying to accomplish. They innovated and they pushed out new volumes of data, new volumes of threat, and then they take their vacations again around the end of the year. They want to go hang out with their relatives as well. They want to go hang out and enjoy Christmas. They want to go hang out and enjoy the beach. This is automation in action. And here is something you can't ignore, IoT. IoT is it's a hot mess, because IoT means you're looking at a device that may have a processor that it has all the wit of a squirrel. It has all the processing power of a squirrel. It is built by the cheapest mechanisms possible. That means that the operating system has all the flaws that it has from the time that it was engineered to the time that it was released and bought by you. And threat actors know that. IoT is the new hotness, making sure that they're compromising things like DVRs, things that are hard to understand where they're at in your network, discovering them, because you can't put an agent on an IoT device. They're not that smart. You don't have a way of putting and detecting what's going on that endpoint, short of making sure that it's in a special segregated network and that you can see inside the flow. This is the era of TLS 1.3. This is the era of PIN certificates. This encryption everywhere means that you can't see inside that specific flow, and you don't know what's happening inside of it. Since you can't put an agent on an IoT device, you've got to try to work around that. Making sure that they are in effectively segregated networks and that you're using machine learning to look at the way that those networks are being used and the types of traffic that are going across them. This is an important component. Machine learning is absolutely the future. Out of all the agencies that I've worked with, from the Department of Defense to government, the threat artifact database that we maintain at Palo Alto Networks is the largest one that I've seen in the world. It allows us to do unsupervised and semi-supervised learning with our machine learning. The reason we do that is because we have got to increase our rate of response. We have got to decrease the amount of time it takes us to find a malignancy and to do something about it. Machines are the only things that can actually do that. Humans are simply too slow. Watch out for IoT. Make sure that you're using machine learning to leverage the power of your security suites that you have to detect and stop malignancy in IoT devices right away. And here's a neat bit of data. Malware has evolved to the point where it's now looking to see if it's running inside of a sandbox. This is instances of malware that tried to manipulate our sandbox itself. It's doing things like looking at the amount of memory that the workstation that it's executing in has. If it's a VM and thereby likely a sandbox, frequently they can do things like increase the quantity of available memory, or look at the name of the storage device. Is it one of the storage device names that's commonly used in sandboxing technology? Look at the MAC address. Is it one of the MAC addresses that's commonly used in sandboxing? All of these things contribute to whether or not a piece of malware executes. So you've got to use an effective bare metal sandbox that is randomizing all of those components to make sure that the malware will actually execute. This is extremely difficult to do. Doing it well is not simple. Automating the sandboxing of everything is critical. I'll give you an example. At Microsoft, we would have a threat actor that would use a credit card to purchase a cloud instance. And this happens at Microsoft, it happens at Google, it happens at AWS. And then with this cloud instance that they have purchased with a stolen credit card, they build malware. And they salt the malware so that it does not match a hash or a signature. So they're now pushing out malware from a trusted IP source at 40 gigabit per second, and it doesn't match a hash. That means that your external data lists that you maintain are useless because it's coming in and it may have a TTL for the DNS records in the minutes. It was recently built and it doesn't come from an IP space that is known to be compromised, and it doesn't match a hash or a signature. You've got to sandbox everything. The only way to do that is with your automation. Use the automation against them. Why do they do it? Volume of threat is roughly correlated to certain financial indexes, Bitcoin being one of them. It is always about money in some way. It can be a patriotic act for these threat actors to do what they do because they are trying to support their home nation. That doesn't justify it, but I'm telling you the level of dedication that they will have to their job. What they do is look at what they're trying to build. They look at the nations that they are adversarial to. They look at what they're trying to accomplish at home. Are they trying to feed their families? Are they trying to increase their prominence on the international stage? These things all contribute to a threat actor doing what they do. They are well educated and well funded. Frequently, they have budgets higher than you do. But they are incented to do this work largely by money. So how did automation work out for us internally at Palo Alto Networks? We have automated just about everything. At Palo Alto Networks, our SOC is 9 people. 9 people for the largest security company in the world. You're looking at 70,000 customers. You're looking at thousands of employees, billions of alerts, and we do it with 9 people that work 8 to 5 every day. How did we accomplish this? We automate everything. By automating everything, by making sure that when a phishing campaign starts, that we use that automation to let the machine learning find the threat, and then automate our response to it. We only have to touch that phishing campaign once. And then the machine learning helps us find additional threat campaigns that are like it in the future. Because of this level of automation, our time to detect is roughly 10 seconds. And this is the era of working from home. So it has actually improved our time to respond. Originally, our time to respond was right at 4 minutes. Now we are right at 1 minute. 1 minute of time to respond to something that needs to be looked at by a human. Because we're using the machine learning, we're using the automation to escalate those things that need to be looked at to our people. 10 seconds time to detect. On the offensive side, we understood that we had roughly an hour to really accomplish what we were trying to accomplish when we were doing a takedown of an organized crime group online. That takedown had to be orchestrated in the course of 1 day. It had to happen in 1 night around the world at the same time. Offensive threat actors, they understand the value of time. They are using that automation to effect change in your network as quickly as possible. They want to be in and out and either start the encryption event or get the data that they're trying to retrieve as quickly as possible. This is data backing up that automation is the way, it is the future of security, because machine learning gives you a chance to take a level 3 engineer that typically only looks at the most important cases and collect their wisdom, collect their skills, and push it down to the very frontline person. For many organizations, the person making a decision on whether or not you are compromised is a layer 1 person that is frequently the lowest paid person on the entire security team, or it's an intern who's not getting paid at all. That distinction is critical. By using automation and capturing the wisdom of those skilled security engineers that you have in-house, you can take their skill set and push it out to the edge. This is the era of identity is your edge. Your firewall is not your edge. Your cloud is not your edge. You've got devices that span across multiple networks around the world. You may be using Azure. You may be using AWS. You may be using Google Cloud. Your edge is indistinct now. Your edge is ephemeral. The edge is identity. Making sure that you take the time to secure that well and gracefully is not simple. Take that wisdom, take those skills, package them up into playbooks. Those playbooks become the automation that are the backbone of your network. That automation can go and strip that phishing email out of all your Exchange mailboxes. It can go and clean out file shares. It can automate the response to a phishing campaign that is using elements from a previous phishing campaign. That's where machine learning shines. I'll give you an example. For the Conficker botnet, Conficker was not one of my takedowns, but it was one of the takedowns that the Digital Crimes Unit did. One of the components of Conficker was DGA, our dynamic generation algorithm, for command and control. Cracking that DGA, or that dynamic generation algorithm, was difficult. Making sure that the engineers that were doing the takedown understood what the next command and control server was going to be per the algorithm was an important part of that takedown. Machine learning can now detect DGA on the wire in 5 packets. 5. That is a remarkable feat, and it all has to do with the quantity of entropy that's in the URL. How are the numbers and letters that are in the URL related to each other? Are they exhibiting characteristics of previous dynamic URLs associated with botnets or other threat actors? So something that takes humans a long time to do can now be done in 5 packets. That is machine learning supporting automation. How much did it save us? It saved us almost 4 people. We have not lost anyone from our SOC in years. And it comes down to the quality of life that we can provide to them. We give them the quality of life that lets them go and do the active threat hunting. For our engineers in our SOC, they spend a third of their time working on incidents, a third of their time doing threat hunting, and a third of their time working on internal projects, whether it's educating someone or becoming better at what they do. Those 9 people, 70,000 customers, 7,000 employees, almost 8,000 now, as I believe, and 24/7 operation, and they only work 8 to 5, 9 people. So these 4 FTEs that we would have to have beyond what we currently have, this is time that they can now spend doing the side projects that increase your maturity level as a security organization. That means you can get to do things like SSL decrypt. SSL decrypt is critical. If you're not looking at it, you should be. And if you can't put it in, then you need to extend your SSL decrypt down to the endpoint. Let the endpoint become your new sensor. The endpoint is the place where that session ultimately terminates. The endpoint is the place where the data exists, where you didn't have to try to get into it. So take and use a next generation endpoint, stitch that data together with what you're seeing at your firewall, at your edge, put it together. Let the machine learning see the threat in components that are discretely benign, but in aggregate become malignant. That's a critical distinction. Those components that may be 7 or 8 layers deep that are all discretely benign, but when they get together, then they become an indicator of malignancy. So when you give this time back to your engineers, you are giving them the opportunity to turn on things like SSL decrypt or 802.1 export security or zero trust. This time becomes the increasing catalyst for making your security organization better at what they do. And here's how it worked out for us. If I didn't have one marketing slide in here, my marketing people would yell at me. Here's how it worked out for us. We did very well. These are the MITRE test results showing what we did and how effective our automation is against our competitors. This is what you're trying. We want you to use someone. Even if you don't use us, use someone for your automation. Automate this as best you can. It's the only way to create a truly mature security posture. So let's turn to the questions.
I see you're a Rush fan there, Bruce. That's great. Folks, if anyone has questions, please use the questions tab in the webinar software and go to webinar, and feel free to ask those now. And Bruce, we did have one question early on in the presentation. I think during your introduction, you mentioned the Citadel, and I think there was initially maybe some confusion about whether what that was referring to. You elaborated on it a bit later in the presentation, but could you speak a little bit more kind of about the who, whens, and whats of that takedown?
Yes, Citadel was a botnet that was based out of Ukraine. It was using a number of technologies that were innovative. The map that we did after doing the takedown, we looked at the infection map, and it was looking at the keyboard language packs installed on the workstations where the infection existed. And if it was Ukrainian, it would not install. So when you did an infection map, it perfectly outlined the Ukraine. With the only infections that existed inside Ukraine were transient machines. But yes, it is a botnet that was used for a variety of organized crime actions. But the propagation of it, the expansion of it around the world was a good story if you take the time to look it up. But yes, absolutely, $500 million in 18 months prior to us taking it down.
Great, thank you. We have another question about decryption. So you mentioned the need to decrypt traffic at the endpoint if you can't at the perimeter. Is this a capability of modern EDR, XDR products or something else?
It is a capability of anything that exists on the endpoint that's doing it well. On the endpoint, you've got access to the termination of the session that you're creating. So the browser that you're using, if it's using a PIN certificate, if it's using a elliptic curve cipher, your firewall, it either can't get into that data or it would be extremely difficult for it to get into that data. So when you take something like a next-gen endpoint solution and you put it on your endpoint, you now have visibility into the end of that tunnel. You take that data from the end of that tunnel, you pair it with what you're seeing on the firewall, and here on the Cortex side, we call that stitching. Stitching is where we take data from the edge, layer 3 and layer 7 data, and stitch it together with what's happening on the endpoint. Things that are non-obvious, because endpoints, they don't know who inside is all talking to the same threat actor on the outside. So you get a neat perspective when you stitch that data together with what's happening at the edge. The firewall can show you that you've got multiple hosts on the inside that are all talking to the same host on the outside, and it's exhibiting the same behavior. And that same behavior all is malignant. That's an indicator of a threat campaign that is spanning multiple machines. Traditional endpoint software doesn't do that because it doesn't understand what's happening at the layer 3, layer 7 edge, at the edge of your enterprise. The endpoints aren't talking to each other. They aren't collaborating. They don't know to exchange data with each other, that they're all talking to the same bad person on the outside. So when you stitch that together with what's happening at the edge, take the data from your firewall, take the data from your endpoints, put it together. Now you have visibility that you didn't have.
Great, thank you. We have one other question about ransomware and strategy around that. So the question is really, do you pay or not pay? And do you have recommendations on ransomware incident response?
Okay. Law enforcement is going to, when you call them, here's what's going to happen. They're going to say, pay it. Why are they going to say pay it? Because they are overwhelmed too. They do not have the personnel to come to your site and help you decrypt 1,000 workstations, 1,000 servers, and they couldn't do it even if they did have the people. Why? Because they are fighting encryption that is designed not to be bypassed. They can't fix your broken network. They're going to tell you to pay the money and learn your lesson and move on. It's as simple as that. Effective ransomware strategies include things like machine learning. They include comprehensive backups that are well excluded, because good malware, good ransomware is going to look at things like iSCSI targets. It's going to look at backup routines, and it's going to make sure that you don't have an opportunity to recover from what they've done. Honestly, the only real answer is prevention. Prevention is the only way to actually stop what's going on. And that prevention has got to include effective defense at the endpoint, at the edge, being automated. It's the only way to stop it, honestly. But yeah, FBI, federal marshal, whoever it is, they're going to tell you, pay the money, learn your lesson, move on. And here's a really ugly thing. Cyber insurance policies. Cyber insurance policies are whistling past the graveyard. Why? Because the vast majority of the time, they do not pay out. Why don't they pay out? The terms of the policy that you sign indicate that you will have certain defensive mechanisms in place, and that you will use them for the incident response. Why? Because if they come in and they do the IR, they can prove that you didn't adhere to the policy, and as such, they don't have to pay out. In our research, they pay out a fraction of the time for the insurance itself. Frequently, the insurance is largely useless.
Wow, that's interesting. I had not heard that. I think that concludes the questions we've had submitted in the questions tab here. If anyone has any others, oh wait, we had another one pop in here. It says you had a slide that showed the need for over 500,000 security people, but you have 9 people handling a great many systems. Can you elaborate if the need reflects the automation being used now?
Absolutely. The point is, most organizations do not have this level of maturity. Most organizations do not have the automation tools in place. They are having to throw people at the problem instead of automation. That means their time to detection and time to resolution is dramatically higher. I'm talking days or weeks. And in that time, the threat actor has had the time to brute force your network and do what they need to do. By using automation, we can get away with 9 people. By doing it the old way, by not using machine learning, by not using automation, 500,000 people are needed. It becomes a wall of people, a meat shield of people trying to stop the flow of data, the flow of attack coming in and trying to do something with it. By using that automation, by using effective machine learning, by getting into the data on the endpoint, by using the endpoint as a sensor, it is your new sensor, then you don't need that many people. You get a chance to exploit the power of the processor and the workstations that you've purchased.
Great, thank you very much, Bruce. Well, I think that concludes the questions we have, and I just want to thank everyone for your attendance and attention, and thank you also for participating in the Triad ISSA Security Summit. Thank you very much, Bruce, for your presentation, and we'll see you all soon. We'll conclude this webinar now.
Thank you so much. Take care.